So you can use the twisted textiles pattern exactly how it is. I'm just going to show you any changes that I made when I made them. I'm hoping to make it easier to make them faster. I added just a little length on it for cutting out the top piece for the fold over, so your elastic casing is wider and easier to pull things through. Personal preference, works without it. I also have some adult sons who have beards that don't fit in the face mask, so I did a hack. I have it wider like I like it, and then I just put a line down and met that curve, and that gives enough room for a fair sized beard. So that being said, I'll show you how to cut out, and again, I'm assuming that you haven't sewn before. So most times you fold something over so you have both sides and fit it on there. I'm trying to use up some scraps here. This is a filter cloth. I'll talk a little bit about that while I'm cutting this out. So if you make your, if you print out multiple pages, you can cut out multiple pattern pieces. But you can also, if you're making one size, you can just cut out one and you can fold it. Like you can fold it over to get the lining size and then unfold it for the top. So these are, it's like a filter cloth. It's a breathable non-woven lining, and it's washable too. Interfacing would work. Of course, sew in, probably not iron on. Those cloth catchers for the laundry. So now I need one set, which would be two sides. This is 2 layers. For the top, I didn't cut this particular pattern piece wider, so I'm just eyeballing it because I like that extra width. Again, not necessary, it works without it. Thank you, Twisted Textiles, for this pattern. So now I have 2 of the top. While I'm here on a flat surface, I'll just put them right sides together because that's how we sew them together anyways. So I have 2 lining, 2 top, and now I need lining for the inside. So it's just the same thing, except for I'm going to fold it over, lay it down, now I have 2 fabric of the lining, which I'll just put right sides together while they're here. Easier than laying out at the sewing machine sometimes. And then this is that filter cloth, or K-cloth, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put all 4 layers together. I want to make this quick, and I'm going to look and see how they line up and just play with them until they line up nice. You can use anything. You can hold it together. These are sewing clips off of Amazon. They're my favorite thing to use. I'm kind of lazy. You can pin them, you can use clips from dollar stores, you can use paper clip things. Also, those foldable barrettes work quite well. So I've come over here to sew now, and like I said before, this is meant for beginners. So I have 2 top ones, or front pieces, which are longer than the lining, and I have a lining piece and an inside piece, and you can see here they're not even. It's easier to sew your lines straight if you cut them. I was doing some sloppy cutting, and I've had some help from my husband. I'm not going to say he did it because I appreciate the help. So again, assuming you're somewhat of a beginner, you always pull your 2 threads to the back, and you stitch a couple forward and a couple back stitches to start, and then you can hang on to your thread, and if you just pull your thread a little bit, it can start your fabric moving. It's really easy to get it stuck. And I just trim my threads as I go. It's total personal preference. You can trim them all at the end. Again, threads pulled behind, you'll have less trouble starting. This is thinner, it's going to be even harder to start, so I'm going to really hang on to those threads. Sometimes I get stuck down in that little hole. I decided to make this video because I have friends who want to learn how, and family, and they have access to machines and stuff, but they don't know how, and we really shouldn't get together to be teaching each other with social distancing, so figured I'd just post this for everybody. And I'm assuming anybody who knows how to sew wouldn't need to watch this anyways. You just grab the pattern yourself. And then we put, and I line up and I flip the two bottom pieces under, because they'll go under, and I flip the two forward pieces, the two top pieces forward. And then we're just going to stitch that about 1/4 of an inch. Forward and back. And it really doesn't matter if you're perfect or not. Close enough is good enough with these. And then we're going to do the exact same on the bottom. Again, I'm just taking the two center seams of the right sides there and matching them up, and then I'm pushing the top seams forward and the bottom seams under. It's to prevent them all going under and all being a whole bunch of layers on one side. You'll find yourself in trouble with your sewing machine. And again, I'm doing bigger than 1/4 of an inch to accommodate. I have a little shorter lining piece here. Close enough is good enough. And then now all we're going to do is turn it inside out, much like a sock. And if you press, your job will be much easier. Treat the layer that's longer as the front and the layer that's shorter as the inside. And my light burnt out on my machine. I'm not going to go out just to get a bulb, so I have my son's DeWalt light here. Casts a great light. It's actually better than when I have the light on my machine. And I'm also, the part that goes out longer, I'm folding it over when I press. And it's kind of, you just got to finesse it. You got to try and get it as open as you can. Sometimes if you stick your fingers inside, it's easier to get it folded. You can finger press. If you have strong nails, you can kind of do like you would a paper for folding. Don't touch that inner lining with your iron. It'll melt on your iron and make a mess. Most of it is polyester and has a really low melting point. I found landscaping fabric at a dollar store locally that it's thinner than the pattern tracing stuff that I have, but I think a couple of layers of those would be helpful. And I'm going to do a separate video to show how to make this mask with a pocket to remove removable filter. And I like to just cut this. You probably should cut it before you press it. That's how it is. I folded over these edges. Now I'm going to press. I'm going to flip the edge like 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to fold it about 1/2 an inch, holding that 1/4 of an inch tucked over. Again, for speediness, I'm hoping to press everything at once. It makes it faster. So again, I'm folding that 1/4 of an inch and then 1/2 an inch and holding that 1/4 of an inch. So now that this is pressed, it's just going to be a lot faster sewing. You can let everything open up. I stitch from the top so that I can see if it's puckering. A little bit of perfectionism there, but I'll do the bottom one from the underneath if you don't care what it looks like on the top, which you probably shouldn't. It's just for protection. Slightly easier to stitch from the bottom, but makes no difference. I was a little stuck there, those threads came in handy. And about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch in. And another tip for making this faster is to trim right up to your hem on that edge, because that's going to flip over in the casing. And if you had you catch your thing that you're trying to put through on it, it makes it faster. I'm all about faster. And then we're gonna see, I'll show you how I like to stitch from the top. Threads pulled back. And again, if you see here, if I was pushing a threader through, it could hit the edge of that fabric. I'm trying to make these as fast as I can, because after I get it to all my family and friends, I'm going to be donating to whoever needs it. If the hospital has equipment, I'll be donating to the people that are working in stores in my community, or anybody who feels they need them. And obviously the hospitals if that comes up. So now this has been pressed, so this stitching is easy. It remembers that it wanted me to fold 1/4 of an inch and then 1/2 an inch, and that will sit there even without pins. You can pin it or clip it. I press it so I don't have to. Same with the other side, it remembers. Flip that 1/4 of an inch, then that 1/2 an inch. Pull your threads back. And that's pretty much ready. I found I have a big family. We have 6 or 7 that live here. So I get this name tape. If your kids went off to camp or daycare and you needed to label clothing or coats, you probably earned it on gym clothes or something. If you have any of that, I would suggest putting a name tag inside the mask, so we don't want to be breathing out other people's masks. So elastic, I use 1/4 inch, it's easier. I like this drawstring threader. There's several different things you could use. You could use darning needles, those plastic yarn needles, anything like that. This is one of my favorite gadgets. You just slip it from the bottom of the mask to the top, and then I'm going to thread the elastic through like it was thread, because that's like an eye of a needle. And then I pull it through, keeping the elastic in there. At this point, I'm going to shove it in the bottom of the other side with the elastic already in the eye of that so-called needle. And then unthread that needle and pull my thing out with this. And I like them like this. I send them off like that, and people can put them on and adjust them to their size and their head and tie it and then just cut it off. It calls for you to make it different in the pattern. You can follow it. And if someone didn't want it around their head, they could just cut this in the middle and tie that in a loop, and then tie this one in a loop, and they would have the ear one. Stay safe and healthy.